Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Chagigah daf Yud Gimel. We are going to begin on the top of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, about 7 lines from the top. The Gemara tells us Tanya. We learn that Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai posed the question: Ma tshuva? What was the answer? Hashivaso baskoil, that the heavenly voice gave. Well, also Rashi says is referring to Nebuchadnezzar. B'shah she'omer, when Nebuchadnezzar says, "Kun yishai elal se'ov," that I'll travel up to the highest of heights, Admel Elyon, I'll compare myself to God above. So Yatza Baskoil, so the heavenly voice came out, V'yarmel Rasha ben Benoshel Nimrod HaRasha, that you're wicked, your relatives, descendants are wicked, even Nimrod. Nimrod, the Marsha explains, was the one who was most responsible in the time of the Dor HaFlaga and challenged Hashem, waging war. And interestingly enough, what was the Dor HaFlaga? Building this huge tower to get to the highest of heights, which is what is being said again by Nebuchadnezzar. Shehimrid kol olam kula olah b'malchusai, that the entire world rebelled upon your malchus. Kama shneisa shel adam, how many years does a person live? Shivim shana, shnem yimei shana, behem shivim shana. Then mikvurois, if you're strong, shemainim shana, may you live 80 years. V'lo min haaretz ad rakia, from the earth to the rakia, mahal chamish meyo shana. It's the distance of 500 years. The oivav, and its thickness shel rakia, mahal chamish meyo shana, is 500 years. V'chein bein kol rakia. We mentioned in yesterday's daf, there's actually 7 heavens going up and up and up. And we understand 500 years, maybe it's referring even to light years, so far. The ankles of these angelic beings are connected, all of them combined. Its legs. Rechuve hachayos keneged, and its knees are connected all the distance. Yarche hachayos keneged kol, and its thighs connected everything in distance. Kufi hachayos, its torso, its body is connected kol, and savar hachayos keneged kol, its neck also. Essentially, it had a pretty long neck compared to the rest of its body. Rashi hachayos, its head, keneged kulam. Then karni hachayos keneged kulam, it also had horns. Then above that was the chair, the heavenly throne. Ragli kisei kavod keneged kulan, the feet of the kisei kavod is connected all that. Kisei kavod keneged kulan. So that was first of all, we're referring to not the chair itself. It was the kisei kavod ragli kisei, even the legs. And then you have the chair itself. The throne itself is Keneged Kulan. Melech Kel Chai V'Chayam V'Nos Sheikhan Aleihim. So Hashem is on that. Yata Marta Ella Al Bimsi of Edmel Elyon. You, a mortal human being, think you're going to be able to reach that high? Ach El Sha'il Tyrid. Rather, the opposite is going to happen. You're going to fall down to the grave. El Yarcha Sebor, to the depths of the pits. Exactly what does this mean? It's obviously hard to understand that a person could think that he could physically reach the top. But clearly, it's not necessarily physically reaching, but it's an emotional connection. That even though Hashem, so to speak, is so physically far away, it's impossible for a person to reach to. Nebuchadnezzar was saying that I'm able to still have an impact and affect you. So we talked about arayos, we talked about masabratius, to minimize the amount of students you have. When it comes to the Markava, one person. Tani Reb Chia, or it could be Liyachid. Tani Reb Chia, Avol Maestrin Lo Rashi Prakim. You can just give the basic ideas, not too much. Rashi says Rashi Parshio Shaba. Amar Rav Zer Ein Maestrin Rashi Prakim El Av Beistin. You can only give even that information to the Av Beistin, just below the Nasi. Chol Mishalibu Daying B'Kirbai. Anyone who's literally, their heart is worried from within. And those people that are on the proper level, and they're not going to be lightheaded, as Rashi says. Has to be, you have an Ab Beis Din that has these qualities. not just some regular person. We only divulge the secrets of the Torah to an individual who has the following 5 characteristics. Sar Chamishim, a captain of 50, V'noise Ponim, a man of rank, V'yoyetz, someone you console, V'chacham, Charshim, a charmer of wisdom, V'novon Lachash, and a skillful enchanter. V'yomer Rav Ami, ein meisun divrei Torah lo'eved kachavim, shnemer lo asachen l'chogoyim mishpatim bal yodom. Now when it comes to Torah, divrei Torah is not, it can't be moiser. You can't give it over to a Talmud Chacham, or someone can't give it over to an idol worshiper, an Oived Kachavim. Oived Kachavim could just generically be referring to someone not Jewish, because it's a mishpatim bal yodom, that don't teach them these laws. Now it doesn't mean you can't teach them among the Shiva Mitzvahs of the Noach. Of course, they're Mechuyim B'davar. But it's talking about Stam Divrei Torah, teaching Torah and being moiser, giving it over to them. Amli Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, Ta Agmarcha B'maisa de Markava. By the way, that does mean so you should be able to put videos on, because it's possible that an Akum is going to watch Torah. The answer certainly is that it's not being geared or marketed specifically to the Oived Kachavim. The reality is, if they decide to listen to a particular class, okay, it doesn't mean you're being moiser, you're mamish giving it over bedafka for them. So, Omer Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, Ta Agmarcha B'maisa Markava. Come and teach you, I'll teach you a little bit of Masa Markava. Omer Lo Kashoy, not old enough. Kikosh, when he got older, Rabbi Elazar got older, Noch Nash Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan had died. Ravasi taught Markava. She said, so Ravasi said, come and I'll teach you a little bit of Masa Markava. Amalei, Iz Zakai, if I merited Gemirtim Rav Yochanan Rabboch, I would have learned it from Rav Yochanan, your teacher. Rav Yosef having Gomer Masa Markava. Rav Yosef did learn about the Masa Markava, about the chariot in the Cheskel. Sabdi de Pumbedisa havitanu b'Masa Brachus. And the Sabdi Pumbedisa, he was learning Torah specifically about Masa Brachus. Armalei ligmor lan mar Masa Markava. So teach me Masa Markava. So Armalahu agmor li Masa Brachus. So let's make a swap. You teach me about Masa Brachus, and I'll teach you Masa Markava. So Basa the Agmon, after he taught him about Masa Brachus, Armalei ligmor mar b'Masa Markava. Armalahu na tanina bahu. Devash v'cholav tachas l'shanecha. The honey and delicious milk should be under your tongue. Devarin hamatukim b'devash v'cholav. Things that are sweeter than honey and milk, yu tachas l'shanecha, should keep it under your tongue. Which basically means that I'm not going to divulge or share with you the Masa Markava. Ravavo Amr Mahacha, which almost seems like he kind of tricked him a little bit. Kvasim levoishcha, the kvasim, the lambs that you will wear. Devarim shehain kiv shunu. Actually, it comes from not an animal, but something which is hidden. Shel oilam yutachas levushcha. Keep that underneath your clothes. In other words, don't reveal it. Amalei tanina bahu. We already learned ad vayomer alai ben adam, until this section, which is already in the second parak of Yecheskel. Armlehen hein Masa Markava. If you learned up until that point, you actually did learn Masa Markava. Okay, Meisve ad heichen Masa Markava. So until where is it? So Rabbi Eimer ad ve'era batra. Until the later time it says the word ve'era, which is later on in the first parak. V'yisach Eimer ad hachashmal. The chashmal is like this fire, this electrical light, this shot. So question is, it's up until here. It's not later on. No, ad va'era megamrinan. Up until va'era, we can teach people. Mekan ve'elach masrinan rashi prakim. The part afterwards, we only divulge it to certain people, the basics, just the rashi prakim, not the depth. Ikad de'omer ad va'era masrin rashi prakim. Mekan ve'elach. From that point on, imhu chacham maybe medaito. If he's a chacham, he can understand it himself. And in ilo lo umi darshina and b'chashmal. Do we actually darshan the part of the chashmal? There was a child that learned this, and a fire came and it consumed him. It hasn't reached the child's time. He shouldn't have been learning this. So again, we see this connection. There's certain things that one should not learn, just like in Mishpatim Bal Yodum, there's certain things that should not be moiser to the Akam. Taisus over here, as a side, asks, why do we need to bring a pasuk to say you can't teach Goyim the Torah? We know that it says a Goy is involved in Torah study, Schai Misa. So you transgress Livnei Iver Sitin Mechshol. So Taisa says, since a Goy would teach another Goy anyway, so it's not Livnei Iver. You're not Chayv Livnei Iver, but you need a pasuk to answer it either way. The Meiri says the only Goyim we're speaking about, only a Goy who is an Oived Avodah Zarah. The Marsha says the lashon of the Gemara is Meisin, that you can't give it over, the deep part over only. Again, if you make a little video, just the basics, which they could easily just open up an English translation, that's not being Meiser, giving over something. And therefore the Meiri holds that's not as much of an issue. Tzfer Shloimo explains that they used to have Rabbanan come to their Talmidim even after the Rebbe's death. So he's saying, when it came over here, that if I was Zoicha Gemirtim Rav Yochanan, that I may still merit learning it from my Rebbe, explains it's fair Shlomo. Or he says from Parshas Re'eh that a Rebbe plants a mahalach of learning in his Talmud. So he's saying the things I did learn, I should Emir Hashem merit to understand this learning as well through his mahalach. That's how we're able to understand this. Okay. The Marshal, by the way, asked this question, how was he able to trick him about Masa Bereshis, Masa Markava? So in this, he says, for Talmud Torah to get from somebody, some Genevas Das is permitted. So it's interesting, right, that Genevas Das is allowed, according to the Marshal, when it comes to being able to Chap Torah. So you Chap Torah, that's the primary goal. Okay, so Omer Rabbi Yehuda Barim Zachar Isa Ish Latayv. This person should remember for good. Chananya ben Chizkiah Shemai Yamalihu. It wasn't for Chananya Nignas Sefer Yecheskel Shahay Dvar of Saisin Divrei Torah. It was actually also in the beginning of Masechta Shabbos that he learned, and as we're going to see now, also what did he do? Ha'helul Gimel Me'os Garmi Shemen. He took 300 barrels of oil. Yoshe Ba'aliyah V'darshu, and he locked himself up in an attic until he was able to understand and explain all the different contradictions in Sefer Yecheskel. What were those contradictions? So on that, you have to look in the Gemara in Shabbos. Talks about Simcha as a good thing, as a bad thing. Tanabon Mas B'Tinik Echad Shahayik Kari B'Beis Rabba B'Sefer Yecheskel. So it was a kid who was learning Yecheskel, which is Mas Merkava. By Mavin B'Chashmal, he mamish understood the depth of the Chashmal. V'Yotze Eish B'Chashmal. So a fire came, B'Sarfato, and it burned him. Ubikshu Lingoy's Sefer Yecheskel. So they said, you know what, we have to lock up the Sefer. It's obviously dangerous for people to learn. Because we see what happened to this child. So he said that when it comes to him, just because Chananya ben Chizkiah is a chacham, hakol chachamim him, is everyone else a chacham? Just different ways to understand this, but basically the point is that just because it happened in this circumstance, most people wouldn't be able to understand it anyway. Not going to be able to get to that depth, so nothing to really be concerned about. On this, Rabbeinu Chananel says a very important pshat. He says this child was not lo kashoy, kloimer eini ben chamishim shana kanach nashe, which means in order to be able to learn this depth of Sefer Yecheskel, Masa Markava, you have to at least be 50 years old. You have to be a ben chamishim to be able to learn. Okay. So my chashmal. So Rabbi Yehuda. So on this, as we continue Gimel and Beis, what exactly is it talking about there? Chayus Eish Mimulois. It's talking about this fire that came forth from this creature that was speaking. But Masnisa Tana, he explains that itim chashais itim mamalois. Chashmal means that sometimes it's chash, it's quiet, and sometimes mimal uses words. The time when words are coming from Hashem, then the chayas are quiet. The time where Hashem is not speaking, so then they're able to speak. Now let's learn a little bit of Masa Markava. Obviously, not in depth. Pasha. And these beings, these creatures, Rotz of Ashuv, were going back and forth. Kimara habezek, in the appearance of like a bezek, a flashing lightning. So my rights of Ashuv. So Rabbi Yehuda Kaor hayotz mepi hakivshan, just like a fire that's jumping in a furnace. My Kimara habezek, what it means, it has the appearance of like this flashing light. So Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina Kaor hayotz mebein hachorsim. It's comparable to the fire that comes forth from those who fashion pottery. And there was this powerful wind and powerful storm that was coming from the north. Anan Gadol, there was a great cloud. The Eish Mislakachas, and there was a fire that was flashing upwards. The Noigaloi Saviv, that there was this brightness around. Umitocha Kein Hachashmal. And it looked like this chashmal, which is this like electric, what we call chashmal, it's like electricity in modern Hebrew. So where was this fire and electricity going? So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Shahalach lichvleish eskol olam kulo tachas Nebuchadnezzar Rasha, that was going to destroy the world under Nebuchadnezzar Rasha, that he was able to channel this. So again, once we see this notion of Nebuchadnezzar's power. The kolkach lama shal yarma umas oilam biad uma shveilo masar kadosh baruch hu ezvanav. So Hashem specifically causes the people that wish to destroy Klal Yisrael, He makes them powerful, because the truth is we're so small, we're not such great soldiers per se. Now maybe it's different within the state of Israel, but the point is that Hashem wants to make it look that we have a powerful nation is able to defeat us. Otherwise, it's degrading if a small, weak nation could easily defeat us. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mi garm li sheyehi shamash l'ovid pesilim. What caused me to be the servant to idol worship? Avanosem shel Yisrael hein garmu li. It was the iniquities of Yisrael that caused me. Be'era chayos v'hini oifen echad be'eretz eitzel hachayos. So they saw that there was this one oifen, we'll see this malach, which was by the chayos. Omer Abelezer malach echad shehu oimin be'eretz. There was this angel that was on the ground, v'rosh magia eitzel hachayos, and its head was able to reach all the way to the chayos, to these other beings. B'masnisatana Sandalafoin Shemai. Its name was actually Sandalafoin, which was this name of this special malach. Hagavo Mechavera, that was taller from its friends. Mahalach Hamishmeo Shana, the distance of 500 years. The Oimed Achori Hamarkava, and it stood behind the chariot. The Kaishir Ksarim Lekainai, and it was tying crowns for Hashem. Again, if this is something which you don't understand, that means you understand, because this is obviously beyond the scope of our knowledge. This is giving us a glimpse. Fine. Eini v'oksiv baruch kavod Hashem imkoimo. We say in Yecheskel, right? It's mentioned in Yecheskel as we say in Kedusha, baruch kavod Hashem imkoimo. V'chlal dimkoimo leika diedalai, which implies in his place there's no one that knows. So the Gemara answers, the Omer, what Yecheskel is saying is Sham Ataga. Over there he pronounced on the crown, the Oz of Yosef Bereshe, and he went and sat at the head. So look in Rashi. Okay, there's no Rashi, but the point is that Baruch Hashem, Baruch Kavod Hashem Mimkoimo, wherever he may be, which means in the time of Yecheskel, he was not able to necessarily see as much. Omer Rabba Kol Shara Yecheskel Ra Yeshaya. The truth is, everything that Yecheskel saw, Yeshaya was able to see as well. Lama Yecheskel daima. To what is Yecheskel daima? Ben kfar shirai samelach. If you have a person who lives in a small city that never, like in a village, he never sees the king. So all of a sudden, when he sees the king, it's an unbelievable thing because it's a once in a million thing. That's what Baruch Kavod Hashem Imkomo is. Wherever Hashem is in his makom. So makom means omnipresent, but it also represents a lack of absolute clarity because Yecheskel lived post Beis Hamikdash, and therefore because of that, the connection was not as strong. And therefore, when he was able to see Hashem, it was much more powerful. When it came to Yeshaya, because he lived in a time, as Rashi says, Shisharasal of Ruach HaKodesh. He had Ruach HaKodesh, as it says in Rashi, El Shaloi Chash Lefarish Es HaKoil, Shaya ben Malachim, V'gadol B'paltin. Uben krach haroyas hamelach enu nivol ve'enu tama ve'enu chosh saper. It's not like such as much of a powerful thing, but the truth is, everything that Yecheskel saw, Yeshaya also saw this great spiritual close connection to God. However, it was harder for Yecheskel to see, and therefore it was more appreciative. So sometimes, interestingly enough, what we derive from here is that when a person gets used to something, it doesn't mean as much. However, when something only happens once in a while, it becomes very meaningful. To the point that we focus on Mas Markava, the way it's explained is only by Yecheskel. Omer Reish Lakish, Ma'idach Siv, Ashir Hashem ki goiga, Shira Umi, to who is going to sing, Shemis Goya al Hagayim, a person who is exalted. In other words, the person who is most impressed by what they see. Diamar Mar, Melech Shebachayos, the king of all the animals is Ari, is a lion. Melech Shebahayos, of all the domesticated animals is a shor, is an ox. Melech Shebeoifos, the king of the birds, is a nesher, is an eagle. But Adam Mizgoya Alehem, and a person is above them. Baruch Hu Mizgoya al Kulon, and Hashem is above all of them. Now, Kolam Kulon, the entire world. Okay, let's hold off 1 second. Let's see question 1. Mi hayadaimin maras elokim kimor ben kfar shiras hamelach. Mi hayadaima ben krach shiras hamelach. So he said the Yecheskel was like a ben kfar, like a man in a village who hardly ever saw the king. Yeshaya was like a ben krach who saw the king all the time. Okay. Kosav Echad Omer, one pasuk says, Udemus Penehem Penei Adam, that the vision was that of a man, Upnei Aryeh El Hayomin or Basayim, and there was a lion on the right of the four, Upnei Shor Mehasmoil, and there was an ox, or Basayim, because of Arba Panim, Wa Echad Penei Echad, Penei Kruv, Upnei Asheni, Penei Adam. There was a face of a Kruv, like one of the cherubs, and another face of a person. Vashlishi Penei Ari of a lion, Vervi Penei Nesher of an eagle. The shore look like a chashiv. It doesn't mention the shore. So how come the ox is not mentioned? That these things are on the throne of the on the Kisei Kavod. So Reish Lakish Yecheskel Bikish Lavrachim. Actually, Yecheskel asked for mercy. V'havchu L'kruv, and it turned it into a kruv. So even though initially we had the shor, Ari, the lion, Adam, and a nesher, but instead they removed the shor, the ox, to a kruv, because as we see, we sinned, and therefore we don't want to be able to have, for you to be reminded of this ox, of the Egel HaZahav. So my kruv, Rabbi Avoi Karavia, as the Gemara in Sukkah says, like a small child, Shekin Bababel, currently Nuka Ravia. So perhaps this is what's being alluded, that we sinned, but we're just like this kruv, we're just like a child. Amar Papa Abai El Miata the kruv pnei ha'echad pnei kruv pnei hasheni pnei adam the shlish pnei arab revi pnei nesher hainu pnei kruv hainu pnei adam. If it's really just referring to a face, so then what's the difference? So aparav mizutri, one is again of a larger person, an adam. The other one was a face of a younger person, which it also shows the significance and power of a child, that we're considering this child to be chashuv, that we put the face of a kruv. Sheish kanafayim le'echad. Each one had 6 wings. The kosav echad omer v'arba panim le'achas v'arba kanafayim le'achas mehen. The other place it says there was only 4 wings. So do these angels have 4 or 6? L'kasha kan b'zman shebeis hamikdash kayim, kan b'zman she'ein beis hamikdash kayim. When the beis hamikdash was kayim, there was 6, and when there was 4, the time when there's no beis hamikdash. Kaviyachol shizmaitu kanfi achayos, that he removed the wings, 2 of them. So haiminayu imut, which ones? The ones that they said shir upon them. Ksiv hacha, it says over here, uvishtayim oifeif the karzel zeboimar, that the 2 that these wings they would call and sing. The omer v'ksiv his oif einecha boy v'einenu, that you should close your eyes from it and will not be, which is usually what we learn out that pasuk is about divrei Torah. So we see there's a link to Torah and the minimization of 2 of these wings. So the Vilna Gaon says that the 6 wings is keneged the Shishi Sidrei Mishnah, Shas. But now there's only 4, since Kedoshim and Taharos is not applicable to us Bizman Hazeh. So this pasuk is, as we see, is connected to Torah learning. Rabbanan Amri Oyisin Shemachasois Behen Raglehem. It's referring to the feet, the wings rather, that covered their feet. So now their legs were exposed. Shnemar Raglehem Regli Yeshara. Their feet were like this straight foot. V'ilo di imayit, and if it wasn't lessened wings, Mana Haviyada, then how do we know? Right? It must be that it was the wings that covered the feet. Otherwise, the wings would cover up the feet. You don't see it. And therefore, that's what it's coming to tell us. Okay. Question 2. Eza demus shebekise nehevchel with demus kruv umahatam. So what was changed? Demus shor. As we said on the kisei kavod, the envision of this ox. That the defendant shouldn't be the prosecutor. So, and because of that, we don't want the prosecutor to become the defendant. Either way you look at it, the point is that the shore, we wouldn't want to arouse the emotions of what happened by the golden calf. Fine. So he said, how would you know about the feet? So the Gemara says, "V'dilma di gali v'chazile." Maybe it just happened to be that they were walking around and you saw them. Dilo temahachi with the mus pneihem pnei adam. It says that their faces were the face of a man. Hachinami di miut. Does that mean that they cut the wings to protect the face? El dil gali v'chazile hachinami di gali v'chazile. They were able to see it. Hachihashta bishlam api, the face orach arlegli kamei rabia. A person will have the face visible. You'll be able to see a person's face. Kari, when it comes to their feet, it's not appropriate to show this in front of your teacher, and therefore it's not necessarily a proof that, oh no, it's not the feet. Maybe it was the feet. That thousands will serve him. So there'll be many, many that will serve Hashem. In Kosav Echad Omer, that there'll be a specific minimization of number when it comes to the troops. So was it that there was a massive amount serving Hashem or minimal? Lokasha kamazman shebeis hamikdash kaim, kamazman shein beis hamikdash kaim. Kaviyachol shesmaita pamalia shamayla, that the heavenly troops serving Hashem became minimized when the Beis Hamikdash was no longer there. Tanya Rabbi Yomi Mishem Abba Yosi ben Dusoy Elf Olafin Yishamshuna Misbar Gedud Echad. That was actually just one group. Gedudav in Misbar. However, for all of the groups, there is no count. Rabbi Yirmiyah Barabba Imer Elf Olafin, thousands of thousands Shamshuni served Hashem on Nahar Dinor at this location, this river. Shenemer Nahar Dinor Neged, the river of Dinor of fire. V'nafik min kadmui elf olafin yishamshuna. So it says it's thousands that served Hashem there. V'ravu ravavan kadmoihi yikumun mehechen nafik. So where did the river come from? Miziyasin shel chayos, literally from the sweat of the chayos. Lehechen shafich, where did it pour to? Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amar Rav al rosh rishayim begehenim. Shnemer hini saras Hashem hema yatzav asar mischayel al rosh rishayim yochol. That will end up that this water will pour down onto the wicked. So again, it's interesting when we hear the words Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusol Olam V'Ed, which is taken from the beginning of Yecheskel. Is a way. We also say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusol Olam V'Ed. We say Shem. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusol Olam V'Ed, which is 6. So some say each word represents a wing, but the Kavod Malchusol left when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So therefore, we say Baruch Shem. We say Baruch Shem, but we don't have the Kavod Malchuso. We don't have the honor of the Malchus. So therefore, because of that, those two words, so to speak, were removed from its wings. A wing represents something which doesn't just mean a bird can fly, but it's its power. It's something which is its glory, what elevates it. So we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Olam V'Ed, which is what was said in the Beis HaMikdash. But now the Kavod Malchuso, the honor of the Malchus, is gone when there's no more a temple. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Omer al asher kaitmai komto, that it was cut off. Shnemer asher kaimto v'loi eis nahar yutzak yisoidim. It was not referring to the time of the river that was poured onto them. Tanya. Rav Shimon Hachasid elu tisha meos v'shivim v'arba daros shekamtoi lehibaros koidim shenivra olam. This is referring to the 974 generations before Hashem created the world. So Hashem created many generations before the world was even created. It's a very fascinating concept. So we know that Har Sinai, Moshe was at generation 26. So we find this connection that it was really up to like 1,000 generations, but we only experienced a small amount. Things took place before. That Hashem had many, many hundreds, or specifically 974, which again 974 plus the 26 means that we received the Torah on the 1,000th generation. Okay. Says Rashi, Nigzolehem livarois lios kodem antaros, 1,000 generations before. L'kaima shenemar davar tzibel el of dor, that this was commanded for 1,000 generations. Ru'oya ha'isa Torah lihinasen l'soif el of dor. It was fit that the Torah should be given after 1,000 generations. Yukshrashi oil miskayim below Torah. There's no way the world could survive that long. Amad v'tardim v'nastal l'soif chavav doros. He gave it to us at the 26th generation, Adam Harishon Ad Moshe Rabbeinu. So we know that Adam to Noach was 10, Noach to Avraham was another 10, and that's so Avraham was generation 20. So Moshe was only 6 generations from Avraham. From Avraham. V'nivra, back in the Gemara, v'nivra Amad HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shaltan b'chol dor v'dor. Hashem implanted in them in every generation. V'hein hein aziponim shebador. These are the people who are disrespectful in this generation. So Kedushas Alevi says that's why there are people who have azes ponim, even to the people much older than them, since really they were from before Matan Torah, and they really are older than the Zakanim. So really those people, terrible people, even though they're here, how can they show lack of respect? Is because the truth is they're older technically, because they were supposed to be born before Matan Torah. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Omer, interesting Kedushas Alevi. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Omer, Asher Komtoi Levracha Hu Dichsev, Elo Talmid Chachamim Sheme Kamtin Atzman Al Divrei Torah B'Olam Hazeh. They hold themselves back by learning Torah in this world. The Kadosh Baruch Hu Megal Lehem Soid Olam Haba. Hashem reveals the foundations of the Torah in the world to come. Shnemer Nar Yutzak Yitzaidim. Okay, we'll stop here. Let's see a couple of questions. TA2. Madu Yecheskel Piresh Mashura B'Mais Markava V'Yeshai Lo Piresh Afal Pi Shenira. Why does Yecheskel make this whole thing, and yet we don't find Yeshaya saying really anything about all these unbelievable visions, even though the truth is that he saw everything that he saw? So the answer is because it wasn't something which was as unique to Yeshaya, because he lived in a different generation where he was able to be Mekabel Pnei Shechina constantly, as opposed to Yecheskel, he was like a Ben Kfar. So let's see, that was TA2. Let's see how they write it. They just quote the Gemara. Yecheskel Daimel Ben Kfar, Shor Samelch, Yeshaya Ben Krach. Okay. Okay. Weiter. TB1. Ksiv alam say of admil elyain v'hadar ksiv. I'm going to go all the way to the top. Ach el shoel tayred el yorech libor. You're going to go all the way down. So mi omer kra kama o mi heishiv kra vatra. So this was Nebuchadnezzar who was saying this, and the Baskol is the one that responded afterwards. Adkan.